Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the South Florida Tribune podcast. My name is Scott Morgan, with the Motor City Mad Mouth, and this broadcast is presented by Senior Medical Associates, and I am glad to be joined by Gary Kornbluh. And Gary, welcome back to the broadcast.
Hey, thank you so much, Scott, and thank you all the viewers. We appreciate you watching us and listening to us. And let me just say that I just want to thank Senior Medical Associates very much. They're sponsoring these podcasts for me, so I just want you to be familiar with, you may be familiar with their logo. It's an apple with a cross in the middle, and their telephone number is 954-659-9690. Again, they're Senior Medical Associates, so they focus on the senior community. That's anyone 65 and older. Of course, I have lists of other top physicians for those that are under 65 and have either marketplace coverage or off marketplace coverage. But having said that, thank you, Scott, for the introduction.
Well, we're very happy to have Senior Medical Associates as part of our coverage, and we're certainly very thrilled to be working with them. So with that said, Gary and everybody out there, this is a show that hits closer to home, okay, and it saved my life. And what I'm talking about right now is the Obamacare program. Now, let me go ahead and make reference to a personal story that affected me. And I will tell you that this program impacted my decision in the past election. I don't talk about politics on shows. I'm not going to do that tonight. But I will tell you that anytime something saves my life, I feel an obligation to make sure that I present it to you in such an objective manner. Case in point, okay, about 8 years ago, I was admitted to the JFK Medical Center and did not know I had diabetes. And my A1C score was 16.9. And that resulted in a mini stroke. Without the Obama program, I would be upside down with medical bills. And I'll tell you one thing, it saved my life. I should point out that the Supreme Court dismissed challenge of the Obamacare from the prior administration, and therefore the Affordable Care Act is intact. So Gary, since you talked about that in an article, I want you to give an overview of what that article was about.
Well, basically, the prior administration, I guess you could say the GOP, tried to shoot down Obamacare. And without getting into any of the legalities, they made 3 attempts to do so and were unable to get rid of Obamacare. So it's the law of the land, and it's here to stay for the foreseeable future.
I'm not one to sit here and tell you that trying to get rid of the Obamacare program cost Donald Trump the election. But I will tell you, it did not help his cause whatsoever, because anytime you're trying to take away something that has saved the lives of millions of people, and let alone the checkbook, I believe that Joe Biden did everybody a good service by doing whatever he could to make sure that it did not go away. And let's keep things in perspective. Joe Biden was the vice president of the United States when Barack Obama was president. And as a result, he was a part of that whole process. But yeah, Donald Trump, when you're affecting a lot of people that are searching for medical care, it did not help his case whatsoever. From that standpoint, I'm not going any further with that. I just want to get that out there. So let's focus on the business in hand, Gary. First of all, question number 1, is the Obamacare program the same coverage that's purchased outside of the marketplace?
Okay, great question, Scott. And I would say for the most part, 95% is that what you buy on the marketplace, for example, the Florida Blue plan that you buy on the marketplace is the same Florida Blue plan that you buy directly through Florida Blue. So the coverages are identical. The only difference really is if you qualify for a subsidy, a tax credit, it could reduce that premium for you. So that's really the only difference. You could be forced to pay full price, where if you go directly to the carrier and you don't qualify for tax credits, you're paying full price. Or you can do it through Obamacare, but again, it's the same policy. Now, let me just say that there are a few carriers that offer plans, marketplace plans that are slightly different. I know AvMed does, I think Cigna does, but again, let me just say, for the most part, the plans that you purchase on the marketplace are the same plans you're purchasing directly through the carrier.
Okay, Gary, with that said, do some doctors not take Obamacare plans?
You know, it's funny. Some people have told me that. They've said, oh no, my doctor doesn't take Obamacare. Well, here's the funny thing. There's no plan called Obamacare. There's no network called Obamacare. Obamacare only refers to the subsidy, the tax credit. So when people tell me that, it really doesn't make any sense. I think what they may be trying to tell me is that they may have Medicaid and their doctor may not take Medicaid. I think they may be mixing up Medicaid with Obamacare. I'm not really sure, but it's kind of a fallacy that doctors don't take Obamacare because, again, the plans are essentially the same. So if a doctor is in the network with Florida Blue, he's going to take the plan whether you purchase through the marketplace or outside the marketplace.
So I know a lot of our fans out there are going to ask, do I have to purchase health insurance? And if not, do I face a tax penalty?
Well, you used to have to pay a tax penalty if you didn't purchase health insurance. But in, I believe it was January of 2019, the government did away with the individual mandate, which said that you had to buy health insurance, and if you didn't, you'd get hit with a tax penalty. So that tax penalty is gone. So if you want to go without health insurance, you're more than welcome to go without health insurance. Of course, it would be kind of foolhardy to go without some sort of medical coverage, especially during a pandemic.
Okay, so am I covered for pre-existing conditions?
Yes, absolutely. And that is one of, I know you mentioned, well, let me just say, pre-existing conditions really were that big sticking point with Trump. Now, I heard that he wasn't going to get rid of pre-existing conditions, but I'll say that just to follow with something you said, the problem is Trump didn't, or the GOP didn't have a replacement to Obamacare. So it's okay if you replace something, but you have to have, you have to have a replacement so that people are still getting coverage for their pre-existing conditions. So that is a big sticking point. There are a lot of us out there that do have, suffer from diabetes, like you, Scott, from God forbid, God forbid, cancer, etc. So again, so to answer your question, yes, the short answer is yes. It doesn't matter what type of pre-existing condition you have, you're covered through the marketplace.
And on a positive note, folks, I don't have diabetes anymore. And the reason why I was able to get rid of it is because I watched my diet, my weight, and I was able to get that weight under control and no longer have to take any types of medication. I refused to take insulin at the time. Thankfully, my doctor said, I just took a couple of pills. They said the only way you're going to get rid of it is you want to make sure that you watch your weight. And as a result, I went ahead and adjusted my diet. But let me tell you, that was a very, very important situation. Thanks to my wife, Candy, who at that time was my girlfriend, said you either have one of two ways to get to the hospital. One, I'm either going to take you. Two, I'm going to call an ambulance. And I really wasn't in the mood to run up a taxi cab drive with an ambulance. So she took me to JFK, and the rest is history because I led to a myriad of other problems. But I don't have it anymore. But the pre-existing situation is one that a lot of folks really look at. And, sometimes you wonder, pre-existing conditions are nitpicked to a point where high blood pressure, name me a person out there doesn't have high blood pressure in this day and age.
Right. It's
So
true. But a lot of those conditions like high blood pressure nowadays aren't even really considered pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, but doesn't it bring out that gray area a little bit, Gary, where if they're looking for an excuse not to cover you, they can check off the box and say high blood pressure, ding, decline, or we're going to charge you a lot of money.
Right.
And go up. Good stuff.
Which is nice about Obamacare, and as you said, of the marketplace, that, and again, Scott, you mentioned pre-existing, and that is such an important point. And yes, the short answer is yes, you are covered, whether you're going through the marketplace or you're going outside the marketplace. As long as it's an ACA compliant plan, you're definitely covered for pre-existing conditions. Now, let me just say, if you go with like a short-term medical plan, and that's another, that could be another podcast, Scott. Short-term medical is a whole nother policy in itself, but those are medically underwritten. So you do have to prove medical insurability to qualify for those plans. But the marketplace, you do not have to qualify. There are no health questions, no medical underwriting. Everybody gets coverage. I've insured many people that had cancer and had diabetes and are suffering from long COVID. So they're all covered.
Yeah, it's amazing how you bring up cancer. You're talking about cancer now. COVID-19 is a pre-existing condition, and you're still talking about the Obamacare program. You don't know what other stuff's going to come up, but the word pre-existing condition is such a strong, generalized term that covers a lot. So I'm glad that you were able to bring up COVID-19. I think that's something that nowadays folks are going to have after effects on, because you don't know what the long-term effects of COVID-19 are going to be. Cancer, well, I don't have to get any details. We know that one's been bad for a while. So Gary, how do I qualify for a premium tax credit to lower my cost for health insurance?
How do you qualify? Okay, good, great question. Very common question. It's a government program, so it's going to be based on your income. So, whether you're a single person or you're married and you have children, depending on your family situation, you may be entitled to a tax credit that'll help you lower your monthly cost for insurance. And I would say half of my clients or more are getting tax credits. Many are actually getting credits that almost completely offset their monthly premium. So it's a great program. With the American Rescue Plan, the current administration actually made more money available for that program, and it's just a wonderful program. So again, it's based on income though, just so everybody.
I'm glad you prefaced that, because that was my follow-up question. You're saying a lot of that's based on, so why don't you elaborate on that very quickly?
So let's say, for example, if you're a single person, no wife, no children, you're just single, as long as you're making at least $13,000 in annual income, you qualify almost for the maximum tax credit. That bracket goes all the way up to, I think it's around 45,000. So there's a lot of room in between for these people to qualify for pretty substantial credits. The same would hold true for a husband and wife. Of course, they would look at family income, right? For the husband and wife. So they look at family income, right? And then, of course, if you've got a family with husband, wife, and children, those dependents, those tax dependents, can actually put you in a good light too, because the government understands if you have a husband and wife and you're supporting children, that you need a little bit more help. So those dependents actually help that formula too.
So Gary, is there a certain income threshold for which you wouldn't qualify? Do you have to make X amount of dollars, say up to 12,000, you wouldn't qualify for it?
No, I mean, there is a chart. So as I said, it's if you're a household size of one, it's based on the federal poverty guidelines. So if you're a household of one, as I said, it's about 13,000. But once that individual is up to over $51,000 a year, that person's phased out of getting tax credits. But again, there's a lot of room in between to get some tax credits. Of course, the less you make, the more help you get. The more you make, the less help you get, right? That's the way these programs work. For example, household size of two, husband and wife, they would have to make at least, let's call it 17.5, and they would qualify for almost the maximum credit. Once they hit a little over almost 80, it's actually 68,000 of almost 69,000, they are phased out of getting tax credits. And then one more, I'll do a family of four. So 26,000, let's say 26.5 would be the minimum. That would qualify that family of four for a maximum credit. And then once they're over, let's say 105,000, they're phased out completely. So again, it is income based, but the government has made even more money available. And in fact, people that have were on unemployment benefits now qualify for some pretty nice tax credits.
Okay. All right, Gary, I've heard of people having to pay back the tax credits once they file their tax returns. True or not true?
Yep, I do hear that every now and then. When I'm talking to new people that are not clients of mine, they say, "Oh my God, Obamacare, it's terrible. I had to pay all this money on my when I filed my taxes." Well, here's why. It's because they didn't list their income accurately. Let's say let's say you make 25. Let's say you make 50,000 at the end of the year, but you listed on your application that you only make 25,000. Well, the government can recapture a portion or all of your tax credits if your numbers aren't accurate at the end of the year. And here's what I tell people. People say, "Well, they took my money." Well, they didn't take your money. They actually advanced you that money. That was the government's money. All they did was they took back the money that they advanced to you because you didn't qualify for it.
Okay, well, I'm sure a lot of people want to know that. And
it's true. They're not taking your money. And if they're just recapturing the money they advanced to you, that's why it's called an APTC, an advanced premium tax credit. Because the government's advancing you the money because you're projecting you're going to make X amount of income per year. And based on that number, they're advancing you X amount of credit. At the end of the year, if that doesn't reconcile, you could have to pay some of that back. Okay. And if you reverse it, let's say you end up making less money, you may actually end up with a little bit higher credit on your tax return at the end of the year. So it all comes out in the wash, as they say.
All right, so can I get an HMO or PPO plan? And is there a difference in the cost?
You can. There are HMOs and PPOs available. And there usually is a difference in the cost. The PPOs tend to be a little bit more pricey because unlike HMOs, with a PPO, you can go out of network. So if your doctor, your specialist that you absolutely must see is not in your network, you can go out of the network. Of course, your co-payments and your deductibles will be higher, but at least you do have that out of network coverage with the PPO. The other important point with the PPO is you have access to the carrier's national network. So with an HMO, God forbid, if you have an HMO and you injure yourself and you're out of state, you still do have coverage because HMOs do give you, emergency coverage regardless of where you are. But with the PPO, you do have more flexibility, more freedom of choice. So as a result, you tend to pay a little bit higher premiums.
Now, I do know with HMOs and PPOs, folks, there's going to be a lot of overlapping with all of our different shows. We know that that's part of the health insurance industry. So this is just another opportunity or visualization or illustration of how these terms intermix. With that said, can I get a plan that offers a national network of providers?
You can. Right now in the marketplace here in Florida, there's actually only one carrier that offers a national network, and that's Florida Blue. So Florida Blue has two PPO options, Blue Select and Blue Options. Your Blue Select is the smaller of the PPO networks. Your Blue Options is the large. The Blue Options is probably one of the largest networks in the country. So if you're someone that travel a lot, whether it's business or personal, then a PPO with access to the national network may serve you better.
Okay. Do these plans offer dental coverage?
The health insurance plans don't, but when I take my clients through the marketplace, I always ask them if they're interested in a dental plan. And I would say probably 75 to 80% of my clients take the dental coverage. So it's not part of the health and you don't get any subsidies. The subsidies only apply to the medical insurance. But the short answer is yes, you can get dental when you're applying for coverage through the marketplace. And there's a great selection of plans out there. There are even HMO and PPO dental plans out there, similar to the health insurance.
So Gary, let's give everybody out there an actual definition of what the marketplace is.
Well, the marketplace is just as it sounds. It's a marketplace where people go to buy health insurance, right? So you could go to a marketplace where you get like a supermarket where you're just buying food items, a marketplace where you're buying hardware items. Well, this is a marketplace that just offers health insurance. So there's on exchange and off exchange. If you're on exchange, meaning that if you're going through the marketplace and you qualify for a subsidy, you're going to be doing it on exchange. You'll qualify for an Obamacare tax subsidy. If you go off the exchange, it usually means that you don't qualify for the Obamacare credits, but you can still go off of the marketplace. You can go to carriers directly too. Just to reiterate, if you're going directly to the carrier, usually it's because you don't qualify for a tax credit. But whether you do or don't, I always take people through the marketplace because it's just an easier place to shop. All the carriers are there, and it makes it easier for me as the agent. It makes it easy for the consumer.
Very good. That's a nice illustration. So with that said, if I'm offered group coverage, can I cancel my Obama plan without penalty?
If you're offered, okay, I get that question often, Scott. So if you're on a group plan, let's say you're on what you're saying is if you're on Obamacare, got it. So let's say you're on an Obamacare plan, and then let's say 6 months later you get a full-time job and you're offered full benefits, including full medical. At that point, you would just call your agent. My clients just call me, and I'll actually set them up for cancellation. So let's say you've got coverage that's starting on September 1st with your new company, right? A lot of times they'll put you on like a 90-day probationary period. Let's say you're covered effective September 1. So I would just set your policy, your marketplace policy, your Obamacare policy, I would set that up to cancel at the end of August so that there's no lapse in coverage and there's no duplication of coverage.
Okay, well, so Gary, am I better off using an agent?
Absolutely. I think you're always better off using an agent. And here's the most important reason why. You don't have to pay us. We already get paid by the carrier. So it really would be to the consumer's benefit to use an agent like myself because I'm trained in this. Every year I have to get certified. I have to do my continuing education credits, get certified. I've got what's called an AHIP certification that I need to get. All of these certifications qualify me to help you better than you can do it yourself. And I'll tell you the proof in that is that I've had so many clients come to me that said, Gary, I don't know why, but I'm not getting a tax credit, or I'm not getting enough, or I'm not sure what I did. My application, there's something wrong with my application. Anyway, you're always better off taking your marketplace application to an agent and letting them check your application for accuracy and check to make sure your income is accurate and that everything is accurate so that you get the proper tax credit. And of course, just as important or even more important is to make sure that you get the proper plan, okay, that meets both your needs and your budget. So you don't have to pay me, but yet you get my expertise.
Fair enough, folks. Gary Kornbluh, my co-host of the South Florida Tribune podcast. One other thing I want to bring up here, talk about the Canadian medical program. Everyone gets healthcare. Why don't you try to give a little bit more information about how that works, Gary?
Well, I'm not an expert on the Canadian medical system, but I can tell you it's a form of socialized medicine. So everybody gets covered. They don't have to actually pay a premium. However, they do pay it through a higher taxation on their income. So the Canadians do pay for their medical coverage. And what I've heard is from a lot of Canadians is that it's not a perfect system. There's generally a wait to get certain procedures. Hopefully, you know, if you're suffering a heart attack, you don't have to wait. But I've heard it's a less than perfect system, to be quite honest with you. And I know a lot of Canadians that actually come to the States and pay out of pocket because they feel that there are better doctors and specialists in hospitals here in the States than there are in Canada. But I really, it's kind of a form of socialized medicine. But if you're getting something, you know, you're going to pay a higher tax rate to get those additional benefits. That's typically the way it works.
Well, I know there's a national or international assumption that Canadians automatically get it. That's why we're even bringing it up, because we're talking about medical care / government. So that's why I'm trying to connect the dots a little bit. We're not going to get into prescription drugs in Canada versus the United States. That may be for another day down the road. But it's interesting how you're able to compare and contrast the Canadian system, Gary, versus the American system and the Obamacare program. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not shy about it. President Barack Obama's medical program saved my life, period.
Thank God, Scott. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, it really has. And I can assure that there's probably a lot of folks I hope that have benefited from this as well. So when we put this broadcast, Gary, in its proper perspective, the one thing I always tell people is every time you listen to a broadcast, especially one like these that we do, Gary, have a notepad and paper and take down notes. This is information which is priceless. And once again, the South Florida Tribune podcast is presented by Senior Medical Associates. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. Glad to have on Gary Kornbluh. And Gary, obviously, you certainly have been a tremendous asset to the network, and we're glad to have you on board. So with that said, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you, your website, and so forth.
Okay, so Gary Kornbluh, and last name is Kornbluh. But the best way to reach me is just give me a call on my cell phone. It's on 24/7. Area code 561-305-5949. Once again, that's 561-305-5949. My office number is 954-532-2060. And one last piece of information, my web address, where listeners and viewers can log on, click on my testimonials tab, and then they can read about some of the testimonials that my clients have mentioned about me. My website is www.medigapx.com. That's MEDIGAPX.com. So www.medigapx.com. Thank you so much, Scott.
You're very welcome. Always good to have you, Gary. Just a little information about our network. You can see these broadcasts on www.southfloridatribune.com. If you haven't subscribed to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, I encourage you to do so. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter @Tribune South, and you can connect with me, Scott Morganroth, on LinkedIn, and as well as like the South Florida Tribune Facebook page. So, you know, we bring it to you every week. I love these broadcasts, Gary, because it's fresh information for everybody to benefit by. So if you don't get it on the first try, you know, I encourage you to listen to these broadcasts multiple times, and because there's always great, useful information. I've always been intrigued by the medical industry. And I will tell you right now, folks, I have a 215 license as well through medical and life insurance. I haven't used it a lot because I'm spending a lot of my time devoted to the network as well as my media activities. That's not to say down the road whether I will or not. It's immaterial, but I understand how valuable it is when you're talking about medical insurance, life insurance, especially programs like this that can indeed save your lives. And when you're talking about the Obamacare program, and when you put things in their overall perspective, I am very happy that the Supreme Court did go ahead and dismiss the challenges of the Obamacare from the prior administration. Another thing I should point out on the southfloridatribune.com, is that Gary Kornbluh writes a column for us as well. So what you do is you go to southfloridatribune.com, and then you can look for our writers, and you'll find Gary Kornbluh there as well. So he writes a lot of great material, and we welcome everything that we have. So, meanwhile, Gary, a great show tonight. Hope a lot of folks went out there and benefited greatly by it. And once again, folks, get a notepad and a pen or pencil. You will get a lot of useful information. So until the next episode on the South Florida Tribune podcast presented by Senior Medical Associates and the South Florida Tribune, my name is Scott Morganroth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of South Florida Tribune podcast. And Gary Kornbluh, nice job. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good night, everybody. See you next time.